Sure.
We call that our Zoom Collect. So,
And you also,
you
right?
also. So as Kate mentioned, we were colleagues long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away at Cathedral Corporation in
Rome.
New York. And Kate has gone on to start her own marketing and fundraising practice, but you also are a published author on a subject that we need to know more about. So, Kate, welcome.
So my name is Kate Hanley Kaminsky, and I am a published author. I actually published with Green Writers Press in Vermont. And hello, Scott. No, that's not Scott. It is Scott. Hello. So I publish as people are entering with Green Writers Press in Vermont, the story, my memoir of my mom's journey with dementia and how my father's love throughout the 65 years of their marriage really came into play to take on what pharmaceutical companies could not. And that was an opportunity for him to believe that his love for her would never be forgotten. So what I do now is I work with Alzheimer's organizations, dementia support groups. I work with hospice, any type of presentation, large or small, where I can pull people together from a community and talk about dementia. Dementia, of course, as you all know, is the concept. Alzheimer's is the one that we know the most, and it is a response to dementia. Okay, so Alzheimer's causes dementia. What I'd like to do is show you how I present and maybe give you an opportunity. Does anyone have any questions on the actual disease of dementia, or any of you have any family members who are suffering or parishioners who are suffering from dementia? Because it's awful.
Isn't dementia really, I guess I always thought it was, frankly, multiple diseases under kind of an umbrella of dementia, that there
It
isn't.
is.
So maybe you could explain kind of what the different.
Sure. Let me go right to that then. What I'm going to do now is just share my screen, and let's go to that. So let me do my share screen and we'll start here. So when I present to different organizations, I'll start with this. So my book, which is called Breakfast Memories, again, is the story of my parents and their journey and the power of love and the power that we all believe is that there is a soul within us, and that soul can hide and help everything. And my father's love and his ability to actually focus on what he always believed, faith, hope, and love, is that it is within the soul, there are memories that can be held, even against dementia. So when I present to Alzheimer's or dementia groups, I talk about what is the disease itself, because as lay people, it's kind of important to review what it is we know. And I'm happy to share this PowerPoint slide with you, because if we talk about, let's see, Larry, how do I get rid of that? You're sharing your screen. I don't want that here.
Stop sharing.
No, I don't want to stop sharing. Anyway, this right here is in my way.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, if you minimize one, you can do the other then.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll minimize up here. Minimize that. Maybe minimize that. That's too bad. I don't know how to get rid of that green bar right there, gentlemen.
It looks fine for us.
It looks fine for us.
Oh, you're not seeing it. Okay, good. Okay, wonderful. Okay. So basic facts about dementia. Are you also seeing that? Okay.
Yes.
How can, I was a caregiver And as we talked about COVID in the beginning of this meeting, it was awful for caregivers during COVID with family members who had dementia. COVID was awful on all health aspects and all health industry, particularly those with memory loss, because it's lonely enough. But as we go through this, there's different steps we can take. Most of you have heard about these comorbidities. You know, we have renal disease, cancer, heart attack, diabetes, stroke, asthma, and then we have a patient in the inside. And all of these are comorbidities. When they are joined by dementia, it worsens because you then have complex problems. My father had very, very, very severe heart illness, and both of my parents lived in Rochester. And so I would go visit them and take my dad to heart appointments and vascular appointments, and then my mom to her dementia appointments. But like many people in your parishes, I bet, it's a hard subject to talk about. My father had a very difficult time accepting that his beautiful wife, who had graduated from Hunter College back in 1949, actually was losing her mind. On a lighter note, she had 7 children. I was one of them. So, you know, today we joke and say, I think we did this to her, but it was very difficult for him, and he wouldn't leave her. So there were many instances during the time of me caring for them, going back and forth to our Rochester home where I grew up, where he would be hurt. An example was he had 2 discs broken in his back and refused to stay in the hospital, signed himself out and went home because he didn't want her alone, and he didn't want people coming to take her. So there's a huge difference between aging and onset dementia. So paranoia, suspicion, agitation, excessive anxiety, depression, hallucinations. My mom was a chandelier in a room. She could walk in and light up like a galaxy. Very beautiful Irish Catholic woman. Gave mostly everything to the church and to her family, and was a religion school teacher. And as dementia first appeared, she was just withdrawn. She had this gorgeous auburn hair that she would brush so beautifully, and she stopped doing that. And that was always her real strength. She was what we used to call a quick change artist, because she would garden and have everything on the table and always was caring for someone and always very active. And then about 5 minutes before my father would walk in, she'd run upstairs and put lipstick on, come back down, and looked like $1 million. So that started to change. Dementia is not a part of normal aging. And dementia is the disease that causes the memory loss. Thinking, speaking, decision-making, normal activities, personal hygiene, which I just related, insomnia, wandering. And in its final stages, dementia just makes the patient, the person living with dementia, fully dependent on someone else's care. So there are many diseases that cause the group of symptoms, okay, called dementia. So Alzheimer's, vascular, frontal lobe, Lewy body, those are all irreversible dementias due to a physical change in the brain. And I'll show you that change. Alzheimer's is the most common. And people often don't recognize that there's a difference between Alzheimer's and dementia itself. Dementia can occur after strokes and create these abnormalities in the brain. A person can have 1 or more types of dementia. And then there are some dementias that we know about. Vitamin B deficiency. Generally, when a person takes someone living with dementia into a doctor, they'll say she's tired all the time. I'm going to use the reference to she. Tired all the time, depressed. A lot of that could be a vitamin B deficiency, particularly in the Irish. My mom was always being asked if she's taking vitamin B, and she would get shots it didn't help. She actually had what was not normal, which vitamin B increase can help. She had dementia. So this is the brain, as you can see the outline here, okay? And the biggest type of dementia is Alzheimer's, and then there's vascular, and then there are others. So dementia doesn't have any social boundaries. So there's some very, very brilliant people, which was what my father couldn't accept, that had dementia. Norman Rockwell, one of my favorites, Robin Williams, who we know, Margaret Thatcher. And as you read through these, it's good to note that the typical onset is after 65, which may be the case with some of your parishioners, but it can also occur in the younger ages. So Alzheimer's is the most common. So although not all causes of Alzheimer's disease are known, experts do know that a small percentage are related to mutations of 3 genes, which can be passed down. You may know that you can have a test to see if you have Alzheimer's. In my family of 7 of us, we came up with none. So we think that what the doctors told us is that my mom did not have Alzheimer's, but you can have a test for it. And it's the gene of E4, okay? So Alzheimer's has plaques and tangles in their brain, and the plaques are a protein that are called beta amyloid, and the tangles are tau. So when you read through Alzheimer's books, they refer to both of those things. And that's what happens there. Vascular dementia is the kind that my mom had. And those are small TIAs. Those are caused by damage to the brain with just small strokes. And they're not the stroke that you originally think of when I'm having a stroke. My arm is numb. Most often people don't know they're having them. Lewy body is another type of dementia, and it's one of the more progressive types. It's a lot of hallucinations and serious problems with focusing and attention. And then, of course, you have the rigidity of Parkinson's. And so that rigidity with Lewy body is called Parkinsonism. Frontotemporal is another type of dementia, and that is also the kind that my mom had. That's that front area of your brain that affects your personality, your behavior, and your language. So as my mom became a shell of herself, that's what she went through. And then there's all the mixed kinds. I'm really making this shorter than a typical presentation, but I think it's important to know what types of diseases are out there with dementia. And they are neurological diseases, which is why you go to a neurologist. So the TBI is really serious. TBI we're seeing a lot of with football players now. My younger sister is a neuropsychologist, and she's on the NFL neuropsychology team. So she's been doing the brain scans of a lot of NFL players, and it makes her so sad to see that this is what's happening. No matter how good the concussion prevention is with all of our different helmets these days, it's very frightening to see what brain damage can do and how it can, increase your chances of dementia. Mm-hmm. And this is, obviously the different types of dementia continue. And again, Larry, I'll send you this if you'd like it. But a scary statistic is that it's about 1 in 5 people will be getting dementia, and it's primarily women. So again, going back to the beginning of how do we make sure that normal aging is not misdiagnosed as dementia so that the person can get help, is that sometimes we forget things. With a dementia patient or dementia person, the correct nomenclature these days, politically correct, is a person living with dementia. They lose their ability to have notes. They lose their ability to take care of themselves, and they just plain forget all about that is a really good typical statement. The behaviors include a lot of confusion and trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. When I first took my mom into a geriatric neurologist to be seen, after my father said, Kate, I think something's wrong with your mother, we took her in and she was asked to draw a clock. And again, this is my mom, who could have been a CFO and was the CFO of our family. Absolutely brilliant. And she drew a clock and she drew the numbers outside the clock. So she drew a circle and then she put the 12 down here, the 6 up here. And as my father and I watched her, we were crushed. But that's a visual imagery that she couldn't remember. So a lot of misplacing, it's always a joke, I put my keys in the freezer. Well, that's like not so much a joke anymore. Okay. Where are the cookies? And we find them, someplace up in her bathroom, different things like that. And then totally withdrawing during a neurological exam. So when those things are happening, it's an indicator, it's time to see a doctor. And it generally is a geriatric neurologist. My mom's doctor was in Rochester and was fabulous. And he would ask us questions. What happens is they take notes, and it's really a qualitative approach. So the doctor will say, oh, my mother's name was Bernadette. So gorgeous. And my dad and I took her in the first time, and the doctor said, oh, okay, Bernadette, tell me about yourself. And my mom was the happiest soul on earth. There is nothing about my mom that people didn't love because she was so happy. And so the doctor said, how many children do you have? And again, the best part of my mom's life, we know, was us, all 7 of us. And she said, a lot. And he said, okay, can you tell me their names? She stopped. And at that time, my hands were sweating and I was sitting on my hands, and I saw my father holding his head with his hands and his head down. And she named a couple people. I was one of them. Catherine is my name. And he said, okay, well, don't worry about it. I'm sure they're lovely people, and stopped. The next appointment, 6 weeks later, he asked the same question. At that time, she didn't know who I was, but she knew I was a nice person, the nice girl in the corner. So it's very hard to watch. So here's our brain. All of these parts, there's our frontal lobe right there, all of our decision-making, okay, all of our judgment, all of our eyesight, everything is affected when dementia starts. Here's Alzheimer's, okay? So here is a preclinical. So this is a healthy brain, okay? Look at all the cerebral cortex, very, very, very healthy, okay? Then we go down to moderate onset of Alzheimer's, and you can see that there's some gaps in here, okay? So it starts to decrease in that health, the shrinkage of the hippocampus. And then we go over here and look at what's happened. I mean, so much damage. Here's another view. Healthy brain, severe Alzheimer's, a PET scan. You see this blue, and then you see an advanced PET scan. We have that science now. Alzheimer's was actually discovered in 1901 by Dr. Alois Alzheimer. And he would research it. So everyone that came in with a sign of memory loss was known as Alzheimer's, okay? Which is why that expression is so prevalent now. People think Alzheimer's is dementia. Same thing, and it's not. We just discussed that. But in 1971, the Office of the Aging Congress came through and said, we've got to start helping people. So in 1971, we started to look at memory, but all of the data prior to that was known and coded in our medical centers as Alzheimer's. So there was not a code for vascular because we didn't have all of this beautiful imagery that we can do now in technology. So the old days, everything was coded as Alzheimer's. So it's taken a long time to actually really see the severity of other types of dementia out there. So stages of dementia are early, middle, and then late. And then when death occurs, dementia can cause death. In my mom's case, she couldn't swallow. She stopped eating. And so sometimes that's the cause of death. Okay. But it was actually the root cause was her brain stopped. So her brain stopped talking to her mouth to say, it's time to eat. But there are some, some opportunities to help at that age or that stage. And now that I've gone through it, it took me 6 years to write my book. And it was very cathartic. And I went through a lot with it. And actually, my book is a very happy book. This is the hardest part of recognizing what was really happening to my mom. So, we can wander. It's hard. The complexities of preparing a meal, those are all gone in the early stages of Alzheimer's. The middle stages, you can start to see that there's really something occurring, okay? Bathing, toileting, wearing clothes, combing hair, and a person may start to lose control of their bowels. I know my mom and dad were on a trip up to Toronto with Rochester. My father was a professor at Empire State College, a marketing professor, and my mom was his assistant. And they were taking a trip up, and my mom had a bowel movement on the bus, and my father was so mortified. And my mom was happy because she didn't know. So certainly everyone was kind, and my father was not angry at all. He just felt embarrassed for her. In this particular case, in the final stages, food is really hard because the stuff gets caught or they forget to swallow. And the caregivers are very frustrated at this point. How do we support for better dementia care? I say Congress, Congress, Congress. I say give us more caregiver support. We just started being able to have our families be paid for caregiver support because a caregiver often has to give up their job. If they don't want their patient, their family member, whomever, in a care center, then the person stays at home. And that means you've got to have full-time care at home. The Medicare will do a good job supporting some of the memory care needs. Medicaid, there's not many places that accept Medicaid as a patient for caregiver. I know Citron has a couple rooms in their place, but Medicaid is a very difficult one. Dementia is tricky, and a caregiver needs our help. It's a very, very, very hard balance and struggle. In my case, I had two boys, 18 and 16, when we took my mom from Rochester to be with us. And my 18-year-old was applying to colleges, and I clearly, physically, visually remember pushing aside the college applications and saying to my husband, I can't do both. You got to get him into college. And that's what happened. Had to give up one. So gestures, pointing, clapping, any emphasis of using our different opportunities of expression, okay? So tasting, smelling, any of our senses are really helpful when you're working with someone with dementia because that is still relatable, okay? So clapping loud, smell is a beautiful thing. Taste, touch, actually touching. So when my father recognized that my mom was going through dementia and that there was not a pharmaceutical cure for it, again, he was in marketing with the Rochester Empire State College, and he was brilliant. He was one of the people behind the Post-it note in 3M. There's a big sign when you walk into 3M in think it's Minnesota. And it says, Peter McDonough. So anyway, that's my maiden name. My father, every morning, I don't know, can you see this, Larry? Or maybe I'll show it. Larry, you still there?
Yeah, we can't see it while you're sharing the screen, but
okay, I'll stop my share when I'm done and I'll show you what my father did. Helpful tips to caregivers. There's a really cool thing that I do when I'm with families at memory care centers. And I take a beanbag and I say, this is what's going on with grandma's brain. Let's talk about this, families. Okay. So let's just say there's 5 different families around. So maybe I have 10 people. I take a beanbag and I pass it. And I say, okay, let's go through and everybody pass this beanbag around. Okay, pass. And I'm timing it. And it takes 10 seconds. Okay. Now I say, okay, here's the beanbag. I'm going to pass it to you and you pass it to the next person you see that is wearing glasses. Okay. So they have to think. So the response time is a bit longer. So let's say that takes 15 seconds. Then I say, okay, let's pass it again. And this is how grandma is thinking. I want you to now pass this to someone who's wearing red socks. Okay, so now you've really got to look around. Again, the identification and the processing in the brain takes time. And with a dementia person, the processing in the brain takes forever. And that's what then the people can understand, oh my gosh, that's why the response is so long. We can't say, what do you want for breakfast? We can say, I am getting you the best blueberry muffin for breakfast. No choices, because you're not going to get an answer. What do you want to wear today? I picked out something beautiful for you to wear. It's right here. Not, I'm leaving. Because why are you leaving? I'm leaving. I've got a doctor's appointment for my teeth. Not a dentist, doctor's appointment for my teeth. And I'll be right back. Okay. So there's a lot of support that can be done, running errands, empathizing, not criticizing. Pass the packet is the role that I use for neuron connections, which I just reviewed with you. And then how do we get involved? Just support for lobbies, talk to caregivers, let them know, reducing stress, anything we can do for those that are caring for someone with dementia. We can slow down the onset by that Mediterranean diet, almonds, salmon, all those wonderful things that actually have that omega in it to help our brain. And that's my mom and I, one of the most beautiful women on earth. And I love her and I miss her every single day. And what I wanted to show you is that this is the book I authored, memoir, Dementia, Breakfast Memories, a Dementia Love Story. Because as I said, my father woke up every morning when he recognized that there wasn't a medicine and wrote my mom poetry on a napkin. And every morning he would sit with her. She loved bagels with orange marmalade. And he would write his poetry and place it ever so gently in between them at our farm table, that held how many kids and plus all their other friends. And she would touch it and he would have her touch it because he was smart. And so she had that feel. So fast forward 2 years, and then he'd put them all in a plastic baggie, just save them in our cupboard. Nobody knew. And fast forward 2 years after he died, I was cleaning out his house, and I still cry because it's probably the most beautiful gift he ever gave us. And my sisters and I found these stacks of napkins that he had written her. And so I placed them into a book. And what he had done is positioned himself in her soul, I believe, as in a chess set. And he became her absolute fortress of her soul. He never wanted her to forget how much he loved her. And, he moved his pawns, his bishops, his knights, everything to try to conquer his biggest opponent in life. And he had lots of them. He was also a politician, a mayor, and a county legislator. This man knew opponents, and dementia was the biggest one he ever had to engage with. And he won. And I don't want to be a spoiler alert, but as my story goes on, it's very obvious that he won, because I took those napkins home with me and showed them to my boys and used them exactly as he wanted me to, even though I never knew he was doing it. But the power of the soul does hold memories. And it is beautiful to see that the ability to really love someone matters. So no matter what you do, if you can be kind to a caregiver, or just remember that that person with dementia or Alzheimer's is not who they were when you knew them, and they don't know any better. So I'd love to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time and listening to my story and what you do as a pastor. I know that my father would turn to our priest and say, what the heck? You know, what's going on? Doctors, priests, nobody could give him an answer. And now when I talk to pastors and I talk to family members, I say, don't expect an answer. It's not going to come. Something will come within you and rise. And that's the answer that everyone needs. And I can attest that it helps. That's my story.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone have questions?
Victor, I saw that. Thank you.
That was clearly from the heart. So, Edwina.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a conversation with a doctor in a nursing home recently, and they were because a couple of the patients were in their 60s and had dementia, and she said that they're noticing dementia earlier now. Several of the patients were in their middle 40s and had been diagnosed with dementia. Is that because we have better science to discover that earlier, or is there something else that may be contributing to the rise in dementia at an earlier age?
Yeah. And you know, I'm not a clinician. I'm just a daughter. I just know what I saw. And I also know, based on the research, because I'm so, I work with the different organizations, any of those sugar substitutes hit your brain. Foil.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom was always doing, what are those things you put in the oven? You know, those it used to be macaroni and cheese, and they would have all those foil ready dinners, put them in the oven. And, I was one of 7 kids. We had nothing growing up. So whatever's the cheapest way for us to eat, we ate. And so did she. And so all of those chemicals, they do something to the brain. Actually, the World Health Organization just put out a big notice saying, don't use sugar substitutes. I don't know, but I do know that it is earlier onset is happening, all these triggers, but also because we have new technology and we can do scans, which they couldn't do before. They used to call dementia, not hallucinations, but so here I go. What did I forget? What's that? That someone was just insane, right? That they were going insane. And that's what they used to call it, but it wasn't. It wasn't insanity. It was just memory loss. It was brain loss. The brain is so powerful. I teach as an adjunct at Utica College, and I teach teachers, future teachers. And I tell every one of them, if you can take a course on the brain, take it. It's so cool to learn what you can do, what you can eat to help that brain exercise. They say now the more you breathe, that type of breathing, that meditation, all of that helps your brain with that oxygen. And so those are all steps, but Edwin is such a good question. And in fact, it is true. There is prevalence that it's becoming younger and younger. And I think it's because of all the chemicals we're introducing to our body. But again, I'm not a clinician, so I don't know that for sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
What do you work?
as a daughter and varying degrees of caregiver, what did you find in terms of self practices that helped you care for yourself? I mean, it's good to know what we can do to support someone in that situation, but some of us might find ourselves going through that. And so what did you find that was helpful to you?
And any of you that go through that, I'd just love to talk to you because I care. I didn't have very good self-regulation. I was very depressed. This hit me hard. And I basically collapsed. So I didn't have that care. I was trying to figure out, I got 2 kids to raise. I've got a husband. I got a job. I can't do this. Where's everybody else? How come 7 of them aren't stepping up? And it was hard. And now I look back and I think as I watch others, I'm able to say, this is what I'd like you to do because you need water, you need rest, you need to be able to walk away and say, I can't control this. I can just manage my end of it. And that is just through lots of, I love you. That doctor's good. That doctor's not so good, because that's true. This friend of mine can help out. Can you drive my mom someplace? Can you go sit with her while there's music playing? My mom knew every church song, all of her music she knew. But so as a caregiver or someone that's going through it, now I can look back and say, this is what I don't want my children to do, not give up their life. Because especially if they're raising children, I mean, I wouldn't do this to them, what I took on myself. My parents never hired me for that job, ever. I received an application, signed up for it the day I was born. I clearly believe that. There's one in every family, and I was that one, and I wasn't going to give it up. So I don't know the answer to what I could have done better. I can tell you what others could have done better. It took a lot of physical, spiritual healing for me to be able to say, I'm very proud of what I did. I did the right thing. I showed up. So I did learn what I can help others not go through. If that's an answer, Jason, which is a hard one. It took a lot of therapy for me to get through. It's hard. And I'm very comfortable saying that because no one can survive this alone, and no one can get to the other side as a caregiver without being to say, this is what happened.
You talked a little bit about the priest, and I really liked the slide with the with bullet points about simple sentences and one instruction at a time. Those are very helpful.
Good.
In general, what can be the role of the pastor with the one with dementia?
Thank you. And so I worked with hospice as well. So I had this big house, right? This big colonial house, had a living room, and I made it a hospice room. And so in my mind, I called it a dying room. But Father Paul from Paul Drobin, I don't know if any of you know about him.
Father Drobin, yeah. Sure.
Love. Father Paul was with me during this time. Father Paul would go and say, hey, Mac, my father was Peter McDonough. Hey, Mac, come on, let's pray. Hold his hands. With my mom who had dementia, that was my father, the caregiver as well, right? With my mom, he would just say, my mom would look at him and say, oh, hello, Father. And at one time she said to me, Kate, did any of you tell me I had 7 children, right? Did anybody become a priest or a nun? I would just leave the question. Hardly, since we believe that's what we did to you. But the priest can just show up and do a prayer, because a lot of times a person with dementia remembers it. A lot of chorus, a lot of the songs, my mom, I was lucky. My mom was really happy. I think she was happy because we realized how much my dad loved her. She was lucky in life. Somebody adored her. And I think that was the reason for her happiness, but she was happy. Some people are not. So those that are miserable, it's all redirect. It's all not a question. It's a statement. As I said, not what do you want for breakfast, or not, come on, we're going to get ready to get out today. It's, I'm taking you to the shower right now, and we're going to use a new soap. It doesn't have to be a new soap. As the pastor, just showing up and supporting the caregiver and just praying. The power of prayer, just holding someone's hand is beautiful. Larry, am I taking too much time up?
Yeah. I think this is a conversation that we really needed to have. So
I'd be happy to do it again, Larry. I have, my husband and I agree. This is my passion. Mm-hmm. And, I do, again, I work with groups, large or small, and I always ask if it's possible, because I bought a whole bunch of books from my publisher. And anytime I sell a book, I give a portion of it to dementia care centers. And so I always ask, however many attendees there are, a $10 book. If you just buy my book for $10, they're $20 on Amazon and Walmart and everywhere else around the country. And my book was noted by Alzheimer's authors as a gold seal read. So I did get notice on that. And so I'd be happy to do any types of presentations for Larry, for you, and for anyone else, and you know that.
Well, that's very generous of you, and please know that when I sent the credentials to everyone for this call, I included a link to your book.
Thank you. But don't go there because they're $20. Take it. Let me help out. If you're helping somebody, I'm happy to help too.
All right. We'll figure out how to get that done.
I thank you all, and I wish you lots of love. And
thank you, Kate.
You too.
Let's end. I have a prayer of Oscar Romero that I found recently that I think is very fitting for this conversation. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objective includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that will one day grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, friends, the Lord be with you.
So
And also with you.
Thank you, Kate. Bye now.
thank you, Kate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.